So welcome everyone to this episode of the Talent Fix. I'm delighted to be joined by Niamh Geraghty, Head of People at Strata. Welcome, Niamh. Perhaps by way of intro, you could take us through just your background. I know you've had a number of really interesting global leadership roles, and also maybe a little bit about what Strata does and the type of talent you're building.
Yeah, sure. Great. Thanks so much for having me, Barry. Delighted to be here. I built my career at Google, where actually I had the opportunity to work across a number of areas of the business before moving into HR. So I started out doing sales roles, I did strategy roles and operations roles, and that was a great foundation then actually to go in and take some HR leadership roles supporting the global partnerships organization. Then in 2003, I moved across to Procore, where I was leading the strategic people partnering and employee relations functions for their EMEA and APAC regions. And then earlier this year, I had the opportunity to be Strata's first head of people. So I was really delighted to get to do that. Strata are setting up for a phase of growth. So the opportunity to set out that people strategy from beginning to end to set us up for what we hope will be continued growth to come is fantastic.
Brilliant.
So a little bit about what Strata does. So we're an engineering-led consultancy, and we specialize in construction planning, project controls, digital construction, and we support really large and complex projects across sectors like data centers, energy, infrastructure, life sciences, and also residential. We employ a variety of people like planning engineers, people specialised in digital construction. And while we always look at the technical expertise people are bringing, what we really are looking for are people who are solution orientated, right? So they can work with clients on that. And also that they are good communicators and good collaborators, because we find actually that's really, really important for these projects that we do.
Brilliant. And it's a really interesting business because, and I know a little bit about Strata from Enterprise Ireland. We're also an Enterprise Ireland client, but it's an interesting business in terms of its international focus, and also it kind of straddles that construction and technology sector, right? Would you describe it more as a traditional engineering consultancy, planning consultancy, or more of a technology company?
We're really a blend of both, right? So our bread and butter would be ensuring that we are doing that planning, engineering for clients. But we're all about bringing additional value, additional expertise to clients as well. So bringing in visualization, 4D modeling, and that kind of things adds a huge amount. So we have a lot of in-house capability in that. So we are proudly headquartered in Dublin, but also we do have an international footprint. So we have teams in the UK and Sweden and Europe, but actually a lot of our VDC type work is done by our fantastic team in Brazil as well.
Okay,
so
brilliant.
We really do both. The work that they do is really, really impressive. So we were the engineering company of the year last year. But actually what really attracted me to Strata was the values and the integrity that I saw in the leaders and the founders there. So they really operate with people in mind. And we're really proud to be one of only 100 companies in Ireland that are B Corp certified actually as well. So fantastic.
Okay. Good stuff. Okay, so if we just get into kind of the first questions we wanted to cover with you today, and that's really around the sort of skills shortage and surplus talent. And in your view, why specialist skill sets like engineering and construction are still hard to find?
Well, look, there really is a supply and demand issue there, as you mentioned, and it was interesting. KPMG the other week were giving out some figures where they said that the number of qualified engineers that are coming out in Europe is growing 1% to 2% year on year. But actually, the number that you would need just to support the construction of data centers alone is more like 10%. Right. Okay. So there really, really is a gap there. But it goes all the way back, I think, to the construction crash, right, around 2007, 2008. Right? Yeah. So when you go back to that time, students who were coming out of school, but back then, when they were looking at their future options, construction wasn't something that they wanted to go into, right? They didn't see the opportunity. So they were not taking the apprenticeships, they were not doing the civil engineering degrees, and that created a whole lag in the pipeline from then right up until now. So if you were going looking for, a qualified engineer with 10 years of experience now, they just are in short supply because of that lag from that time that's continuing on. And equally, even graduates at the time, there weren't as many prospects in Ireland, so a lot of them emigrated. Right? So they went to Australia, they went to the Middle East, where there were opportunities, and a lot of them didn't come back.
Absolutely,
so
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was in the Middle East myself. It's very hard to come back, back into the tax net, Niamh. So I think that's probably what a lot of them are experiencing.
Yeah.
And like, what's your view around kind of even with the advent of AI, and we're building out kind of agentic AI solutions ourselves in terms of recruitment, but why do recruiters struggle to find that technical talent in spite of the tools that they have at their disposal?
Sure. Well, I think there are two things, right? Actually, I think firstly there just is a shortage of that talent. As I talked about.
So no matter how good the tools are, if the talent's not there, you're not going to find it.
If it's not there, or it's in short supply, it's hard to find it, right?
Yeah.
But equally, I do think that the manner in which AI tools are being used for recruitment at the moment actually is creating some challenges as well as solutions, right?
Yeah.
So I think that we are in what I would call a spray and pray era, right? Is what I'm seeing. So I think employers originally kind of wanted to drive efficiencies, and recruiters wanted to drive more efficiencies in their work, right? With AI tools and leveraging it. But candidates have responded to that in kind, right? What I'm seeing is that applications will land seconds after a job posting goes live, right?
Yeah.
So before even people would have had a chance to read a job description, I've also had candidates apply for a job that I already have them scheduled for a first interview for. So they're applying for so many jobs they don't even know what they've already applied for, right? Now. And it's coming into the interviews as well. So we're seeing people definitely using AI tools to feed them answers and prompt them during the interview. So you can see when you're speaking to them that their eyes are following something else, right?
Sure.
And I do just want to pause and say I have enormous empathy for candidates in the current market, particularly in the tech space, right, where there's a lot of those layoffs and things happening right now. You have people who are really experienced, skilled, they've done all of the right things, and they're experiencing challenges that any group of employees do when they're in a sector that's like being impacted or contracting a little way. But with the technology that's out there now, they're sending applications after application out into what can feel like a black hole, I think, probably for them. And that must be really demoralizing, right? So I think we need to acknowledge the experience that a lot of those people are having right now. But things are equally messy on the employer side, I'm finding. So, you may be able to get through CVs twice as fast, but if there are 4 times as many CVs coming in, you're not really getting that efficiency through. And I think both sides are almost just trying to almost out-automate each other, and we're losing.
There's a bit of an arms race going on, isn't there?
Yeah, it's like an arms race. And I'd love to just pause and say, like, well, can we go back to bringing in that human connection? Right, people want to be treated like people. And when you're starting an employee and employer relationship, it's like any other relationship. You have to build that trust and that rapport. And I think sometimes the tools are just getting in the way of that a little bit. So I think that's an issue in addition to the actual shortage of supply. But SMEs have, I think, opportunity and advantage there in being able to think about how they can use it to provide better experience. And then we just need to get a little bit more creative, I think, in terms of how we go out and find talent and the type of talent that we go after, which is what we're looking to do at the moment in Strata as well.
Yeah, so let's talk a bit about that. But it is interesting. I mean, our experience is that even in spite of the technology that we're bringing to the table, what some clients are asking us to do is actually bring the human into the loop of the recruitment process.
Yeah.
And actually, one of our clients in the US is looking for us to have a human look at every single application and engage with that candidate to ensure that it's actually a real person. And you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of applications, as you said. So it's just interesting. It's a little bit of a almost like we seem to be we're taking a few steps forward and then taking a few steps backwards as well, in terms of kind of what technology is forcing us to do. But just before we move on to kind of kind of how Strata is approaching talent, what is your view around potentially kind of the CV? I mean, and even the interview. Do you still think that they're fit for purpose as kind of part of a selection process?
I think possibly they are, but what I would like to see us focus on actually is a total redesign of the AI tools in the recruitment process, right? So I think there was a starting hypothesis that if we improve the efficiencies of these processes and how we look at things, then recruiters will have more time for the human engagement and interacting with candidates. But actually, as we just mentioned, I don't think we're seeing that come out in reality, right?
Yeah.
And what I would love to see us do is, like any new technology, right? AI is hugely powerful and there's huge opportunity. But if we were to go back to the first principles, right, instead of optimizing for efficiency, if you were to swap out that design principle and optimize for human connection and human engagement instead as the first principle, what would a tool that you would design around that look like? So instead of doubling down on how do we, make this sourcing tool smarter and identify the candidates faster and that kind of thing, if we were to stop and redirect totally, make those asks into the designers of these tools, what would be the different tools that you would come up with, right? And I think that I would love to see exploration into that instead as the future of recruitment, because we will need to leverage AI and I think it will be important to use it. But I think that we just didn't get it right in our first pass in terms of what we thought the best use case of it would be for in recruitment. I don't think it's efficiency. I think it's something else.
Okay, that's really interesting. So maybe in part two of this interview, we'll pick that up in a few months' time and see if we've managed to find a tool like that. But that's a really interesting take, Niamh. So thanks for that. So just moving on to the next part, we want to talk, because Strata is doing some really interesting things, I know, around kind of how you're attracting talent. Could you talk to us a bit about what you're doing around, graduate programs and partnerships?
Yeah, sure. So look, as we said, there is a big gap in that pipeline of candidates coming into the industry. So the early career stage is really, really important for us to engage with to try and help rebuild that. So we do internship programs. We have a number of interns that come into us every year, and we've had great interns, and a lot of them, thankfully, come back to us at the end of when they graduate and work with us, which is fantastic. And we've got a great partnership with UCD, who support and enable us in doing that. And we love to continue doing that kind of work there as well. But some of the other things that we're doing is, look, firstly, we want to try to widen the aperture of the type of talent that we are looking for, right? So instead of just looking, for example, for planning engineers specifically, because that is quite a niche talent, we are open to looking for people with a range of backgrounds, right? So perhaps people who are site engineers, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers. We can teach them planning, and that breadth of experience is actually really valuable for us. It adds to the overall knowledge bank of the company, and it really brings valuable perspectives to people when they're on projects and they're on sites. And as I said, we can teach them the planning element of it. So that's something that we're looking at. We're also going to explore next year, starting to bring in engineers through apprenticeships, which I think will open up people who are looking to maybe career pivot, things like that as well. So, which is good. And we're also looking internationally, right? So for all of those people who did go to Australia, right, and go to the Middle East and different places, we've had there are specialist recruitment agencies who will focus on helping you build relationships with that set of candidates, and figure out an alignment and timelines. When might they like to come home? When might you have a project that would be interesting for them to come and work on, and make some of those connections into the long term? So we're exploring that now.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I know I worked as chair of the Dublin Regional Skills Forum for a number of years, and I think like apprenticeships as a country is something that we really need to get behind. I think it's a brilliant way to bring talent into the workforce, and it's a fantastic way for candidates as well to kind of earn and learn a profession. So I think that's fantastic that you're investing in that. And Niamh, I promise this will be quick. So you'll be pleased to know we're at the end now of our chat today. So thanks so much for your time. But I do want to finish with a question around your time at Google, because you were at Google. It's not often we talk to someone who's kind of at Google during kind of the startup phase in Dublin. So how exciting that must have been. But if I could just get your take on kind of during that growth phase at Google, what did you see in terms of talent, culture, and hiring that companies today maybe are still getting wrong?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, Google was famously committed to ensuring high standards of candidates that they were hiring, right? Yeah. And in the very early days when I was there, Larry and Sergey, as the founders, they were actually still reviewing the hiring packets of every candidate that was joining Google in order to ensure that the candidate met their high standards, right? And I think a lot of founders will probably have empathy for that desire to make sure that their standards are being applied consistently within the company. But they found that they were becoming bottlenecks to their own growth, right? Because you reach a scale where you just can't, right? It's not feasible anymore. So what they had to do is they had to design a system that applied their standards in their absence, right? That they could trust. So they did that. And there are three sort of elements to that hiring process that I think are applicable for any company to learn from. One is really around structured interview questions. So having questions that really get down to the heart of a candidate's capability and aptitude, rather than just doing sort of a walk through the CV, The second one was having scoring rubrics for answers. So no matter who the person was that was doing the interview, what a good answer to the question was would be held consistently regardless. And then the last one is around having hiring committees to review decisions, just to ensure that there was always a balanced perspective, to try and, as far as is ever possible, take bias out of the process and that kind of thing too. So it worked extremely well. And actually, they do make publicly available a lot of information about the detail of how they do it. So there's a site called Rework with Google. So I think it's rework.withgoogle.com. So people can go on and read up about it, actually, as well as a range of different kind of people-related topics and information that they provide. So I think there are things that any company can learn from.
That's brilliant. And I think Google, I'm not sure if they were the pioneer, but they definitely were one of the advocates of kind of multiple interview stages, even getting up to, I think, 5, 6, 7, 8 stages or rounds. What are your thoughts on that now? Is that something that you think is that something you bring on to Strata, or is that something you'd advocate for?
No, it wouldn't be. And look, I think different interview processes and designs need to be appropriate for whatever scale and type of company that you're in, right? So I think you need to design for where you're at. But actually, one thing that Google is always really good at is doing that kind of test and learn, right? And they will always be informed by the data in terms of whether something's working or not. And over the years, they actually reduced the number of rounds that they had, because they found that decisions didn't meaningfully change after a particular number of interviews, actually, and it was a better candidate experience to have fewer. So they've even evolved and iterated on the number of interviews that they've had. I think I did 7 myself at the very beginning, but at the very beginning. So I was very acute, but it was worth it. I had a great time there for a lot of years.
Absolutely.
But I think it's important to always listen to the data, test and learn, so that we can continue to get it right and improve processes for candidates and their experience, so that they can have a good engagement for the long term.
Brilliant stuff. Okay, well, look, what a great way to finish. So, look, thanks so much, Niamh, for your time today. Thanks for listening, and check us out where you get your podcasts on Apple and Spotify.